It's a long way down to New Orleans, and the Birds are broken.
As Justin Tucker finds himself in hot water following accusations of inappropriate behavior.
UCLA destroys the 16th-ranked Oregon Ducks.
Who needs Anthony Davis? Not the Lakers in Washington, 134-96.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big Six in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big Six in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Philadelphia Eagles have a chance to be on the right side of history next Sunday in New Orleans.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast.
Eagles-Chiefs next Sunday, Super Bowl 59 is set in New Orleans. Obviously, winning a Super Bowl on its own, in a vacuum, regardless of the implications, who you're playing, the history, the story, remove all of that. Just winning a championship in a vacuum is one of the most special things you'll ever experience in your entire life. If you're a sports fan, combine it with anything else in life. I'm sure getting married is nicer, although some might disagree. I'm sure having a kid is a lot nicer. There's experiences in life that you can't top, right? But I will say, after getting to experience it in 2017, winning a Super Bowl, there's nothing like it when your team wins it. It's one of the most joyous moments of your life, just in a vacuum. You get that done, you are guaranteed to have that feeling. But I will say too, like thinking about this matchup between the Eagles and the Chiefs and looking back at the last 2 Eagles Super Bowls, actually the last 3, 2004 and 2017 against Tom Brady, 2022 against Pat Mahomes, what made that win in 17 so special and what made those other 2 losses hurt even more, outside of just, again, in a vacuum losing or winning a Super Bowl, is how you won it. It's who you played. You defeated in 2017 the greatest dynasty in NFL history, the greatest quarterback head coach duo ever. The GOAT quarterback, and you can make the argument the GOAT head coach, in a shootout. You beat Tom Brady when he threw for half of 1,000 yards. He threw for over 500 yards in that game, a single game Super Bowl record for passing yards in the big game. You beat him with a backup quarterback in a shootout. You did it by being aggressive with trick plays, the Philly special, being clutch on both sides of the ball, the 4th and 1 conversion to Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz game-winning touchdown in the 4th quarter. Brandon Graham strip sack. It was like a movie, so it made an already euphoric feeling, an experience like no other, all the more sweet because you did it by dethroning the king. You beat Darth Sidious and Darth Vader. Like, you blew up the Death Star. And I think that added to it. It made it sweeter because if it was the Jaguars that year, yeah, again, winning a Super Bowl is nice no matter who you play. We would have celebrated just as hard. But against the Patriots, it feels so insurmountable. It feels so impossible to take that team down that when you do it, there's this shock value that comes with it. And that's a crazy experience that I want to feel again. And it's why Super Bowl 57 hurts so much, because you were basically playing the exact same game as Super Bowl 52. It's crazy. I finally rewatched the game. It hurt all over again, but I finally did it. It is crazy how similar to the final wire, how similar that Super Bowl was to Super Bowl 52. It was basically the exact game, and you just saw what happens on the other side of it. It's an unreal story, and the Eagles have a chance to top what they did in 2017 next Sunday. They have a chance to avenge what happened in Super Bowl 57. You could get your first 2 rings in 8 seasons by beating the 2 greatest players in NFL history, in my opinion, in Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes. You could stop the first three-peat in NFL history. It has never gotten this close. Like, New England has won back-to-back in the early 2000s, but then they didn't get back to the Super Bowl. I don't even know if they made the playoffs after they went back-to-back, right, in 2005, or if they did. I'm losing my memory with that moment, but they might have made the playoffs. I think the Colts beat them in the Final Four in the AFC title. Regardless, no team has ever been this close to a three-peat. The Patriots, actually, ironically enough, if they would have beat the Eagles in 2017 and they beat the Rams in 2018, they would have repeated or three-peated because they beat the Falcons as well in 2016. So the Eagles, they could do this twice, but it's never been this close where the Chiefs are one win away from history. And if you can stop that, if that's how you win your first two championships, what an unreal story. And I know a lot of fans right now are saying they're going to boycott this game, that this is the least ideal Super Bowl matchup and it's boring. We already saw this. I mean, give me a break. I think it's an amazing story. It truly is the two best teams in football. That game was amazing. There haven't been a lot of great Super Bowls over the last 10, 15 years. Both of the ones that the Eagles were in were amazing. They were shootouts. Why would you not want another, 38-35 game? Are you nuts? I mean, that's great. It's the greatest roster in football against the greatest head coach quarterback combo. And for the Eagles, they're representing the world. You're trying to, like I said, take down the Death Star. Everybody's cheering for you. I don't know. That's a fun story. I don't know why people would boycott that. I get it. You want the Bills, you want the Ravens, you want the new storyline, you want the new champ. These two teams have both won championships within the last decade. In fact, they have 4 combined since 2017. But I think it's an amazing story. And I really do think it truly is the two best teams in football. And the Eagles have a chance to make history by stopping history. I mean, what an unreal finish to the season that would be. However, I really like what Lane Johnson said before the NFC Championship about playing with emotion, that you got to stay center. You got to keep things in check, because if not, if you play with too much emotion, that's where you can get sloppy, over-aggressive. You can start to make mistakes. I do think if the Eagles take that approach, the revenge approach, the we have to do this for the world, we've got to stop them from making history. If they get too caught up in that, like, that's for me. That's for you to get into. That's for them to reflect on after the win. But like Lane Johnson said before the NFC title, you can't go into games like that with that approach. I just don't think that's the right strategy. And I really like that Lane said that, because you can, especially in a Super Bowl, there's 2 weeks to reflect and to really think about the matchup, and the media is going to ask you question after question about it for days on end for 2 straight weeks. It just becomes such a mad circus of an event that the emotion could play a big part of it. And this is when Nick Sirianni's saying, like, talking about taking things day by day, this is when you really have to practice what you preach. And the Eagles do a really good job of that, but this is an important week to follow what Sirianni preaches about keeping things in the moment, 1 rep at a time in practice, taking things day by day, not letting this moment be too big, just thinking about it as any other game. I think that's really crucial, and I like that Nick has approached things that way throughout his career in Philly. Lane Johnson said that before the NFC title. Jalen Hurts is as stoic as ever. I loved seeing at the podium when they won the NFC title that, unlike 2022, he was celebrating, singing Fly, Eagles Fly. This time he was calm, but he was determined. You could tell this time he wasn't satisfied, and I love that. I feel like they're grounded. I feel like they're focused. I feel like they're really locked in. I like what I heard from A.J. Brown after the game about, hey, we've made it to 2 now in the last 3 years. Windows close. Not a lot of teams get this opportunity. We have to finish. We have to capitalize. So yeah, the Eagles have a chance to really make history, but at the same time, the players can't get too wrapped up in that. That's for me on this podcast. That's for the media. They're going to ask them a lot about that, and it will be cool to reflect on, at the parade in a couple weeks if it does happen. But at the same time, they do have to keep that kind of stuff in check.
Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's just icing on the cake. And the one bet you could look at with $5, NBA Dallas Mavericks travel north to face the Detroit Pistons and are favored, but only just. FanDuel has the Mavs favored by a single solitary point. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
It's a long way down to New Orleans, and the birds are broken.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
The Philadelphia Eagles, I don't even know if I can fit. If I tried to put it on screen, I don't know that I'd be able to fit the Eagles injury list today.
No, you wouldn't. It's huge. And it is ridiculous how many people are on the injury list. Now, don't get me wrong. They've got three people on there that have just rest related. Although I guess there's one on there that has rest/ankle. So he's got a little bit of an injury. And another one with illness. So you would figure that he's probably going to be okay. It's just, sick for the day type thing. But that's a lot of do not practices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 did not practice for the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday.
That is a whole lot. And if you look over to the right-hand side of your screen, so you see the Chiefs will face broken birds. Yes, that list is partial. We'll see who actually suits up because the Chiefs are in a much better position. Only 5 people on the list. One of them is on IR, who happens to be practicing. And the only person who's slated to play in this game right now that didn't practice in full for the Kansas City Chiefs on Thursday is Juwan Taylor. Just kind of popped up, played, I think, an excellent game last week. I don't feel like there's anything to be too worried about that unless it was a significant injury. And it does look like it was a light practice for him, not anything super concerning.
Yeah, and I do think that it's one of those things to watch. Obviously, we'll see. I would imagine it's never a good sign when you go from full participant to limited. So that's not a great sign. But we're not going to know anything until Monday, more than likely. So at this point, we just got to hope that it's one of those situations where he just had a little bit of a tweak and he'll be fine and he'll be able to go on Sunday. We've talked about this as well. This is the time of year where you're going to play through stuff because you want to play in the Super Bowl. So it takes something pretty drastic to make sure he's not on the field. I say that, and then you look at the Eagles injury report and you're like, well, there's going to be a lot of them that are going to play, but that's a lot.
It really is.
That's a ton.
The ones that stand out the most to me are that we've talked about this a little bit. Landon Dickerson as well as Cam Jurgens, both on the injury report. Jurgens is significant. He is their center. Huge. And I do think without him, their ability to run that tush push diminishes pretty greatly. Not that Dickerson can't do it if he is healthy, but they're listing him with a knee, and I thought it was more of an ankle. So that tells me that there's general lower body going on with Landon Dickerson. That's 2 of their starters that are banged up. And as the Chiefs get healthier, and granted, no one on the defense is on the injury report of any significance. They just had maybe their best defensive output in the front 4 in the last 2 weeks. Yep. They're peaking. Eagles are crumbling. Like this can't go much better right now for the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of what little you can get from an injury report. Because as you said, guys will play through.
Yeah. And the real injury report is going to be next week because this is just, all these guys know what they're doing. They've got a game plan. They're going to be in the meetings. They're going to be, maybe they're not out there on the field and running through practice, but they've got a really good idea as to what's going to happen and what they're going to be doing against the Chiefs from the Eagles perspective. So it's not as big of a deal. Next week's injury report will be a lot more telling. You could still see some guys getting rest early in the week, but if they're not practicing by the end of the week, that's going to tend you to lead to think that they might not be available. And right now, I don't think there's anybody other than maybe the 2 linemen that you talked about that I would think are really huge issues for them, because I think that Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown are both rest related. That's what it says on the injury report. They'll both play. They'll both be good. They don't need to. Neither of those guys need to practice. So not a really big surprise there.
What I find interesting, though, and a little bit concerning if I'm an Eagles fan and happy that for the Chiefs fan, is Devonta Smith, who hasn't practiced either day this week.
Yep.
And that is significant.
With a hamstring.
Exactly.
It's a type of injury that's the big issue.
Absolutely. And yes, he might be able to get back. But honestly, if he misses all of this week, which it looks like he's going to, and he isn't able to practice, say, Monday. I don't know what the Eagles' schedule is when they're going to land in New Orleans, but you want to get down and get acclimated and start practicing. If he can't do that, then that puts a significant dent in what I think they're going to be able to do in their passing game with just Goddard and A.J. Brown. That's something the Chiefs can handle a whole lot better than having to defend Smith as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and hamstring, I mean, even if he is able to go, if he's not 100% or not even 85% because he's trying to play through a hamstring injury, a player like him having that type of injury is really going to hurt him.
Yeah. And what we mean by that is a player that uses his speed and needs his hamstrings to run and be effective and play his game. That is his role in their offense. So all in all, what it looks like is the Chiefs defense rounding into shape. Looks like the Chiefs offense is going to be solid. No word yet on who's practicing where. They're still rotating, quote unquote. I have trouble seeing them making a move. We're going to talk about the tackles on Monday, what that should look like, because we don't have a clue right now.
No, we don't. But I would argue that this is a game that, while it wouldn't make sense because they have not had DJ Humphries play left tackle, if you're going to slow down the Eagles pass rush, you need to slow it down on the interior.
Yeah.
And to me, it's you don't have the huge pass rush guys on the exterior on the Eagles right now. It's the middle guys that you have to worry about the most. And so to me, it's a pretty easy. It should be a pretty easy decision. Yeah, you still worry about left tackle and DJ Humphries, but I would rather have Joe Thuney next to Creed Humphrey trying to protect Patrick Mahomes from Jalen Carter than Mike Caliendo.
Is Justin Tucker finds himself in hot water following accusations of inappropriate behavior.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
There's a big story that we're going to get into here pertaining to Justin Tucker. It was news that dropped on Thursday. We're going to get into those facts, but a situation that now the Ravens will have to answer for, the NFL will have to answer, and we've heard statements on account of Justin Tucker. We've heard it on account of the Ravens, on account of the NFL, and obviously a lot presented in an article from the Baltimore Banner, and we'll get into all that here coming up.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. The Ravens, once again, find themselves in some off-season hot water. As you put it at the beginning of the show, it's tough. But depending on what happens with this, we'll see what the Ravens have to do. They're in a bind for sure this offseason with this, and I'm sure we'll touch on what that means for them moving forward. But yeah, this is definitely a tough situation for the Ravens.
It is. So the Baltimore Banner put out this article with accusations for Justin Tucker. I just want to read a little bit of that article, some excerpts from it so that we can understand the entire situation. We'll get into Justin Tucker's statement because not long after, Tucker released a lengthy statement on the accusations. The Ravens commented, the NFL commented. So let's first start off with the article from the Banner, and this is straight from that article, and there's a lot more in it. So if you want to know more on the situation that isn't covered here, we're going to get to a lot of it, but be sure to check out the article there. So Ravens kicker Justin Tucker engaged in inappropriate behavior allegedly at 4 high-end spas and wellness centers in the Baltimore region, according to 6 massage therapists, including a bunch of things that are put out in the article. Now, several of these therapists said that Tucker's behavior was so egregious that they actually ended the sessions early or actually refused to work on him again. And 2 of the spas management has said they have banned him from returning. Now, the Banner started investigating after a tip they received on January 9th, and they spoke to those 6 massage therapists, and they recounted their troubling experiences. And this spanned from 2012 to 2016. That is the timeline. And apparently, according to the article, the women have said that they have long wanted to tell those stories. Now, none of the women that actually spoke to the Banner said they took these allegations to law enforcement, and there could have been certain criminal statutes that might have applied if the allegations were proven true, which there are different charges that could have happened. But when it comes to the statute of limitations, that is expired. And in any event, such cases are rarely prosecuted, according to that article. Now, depending on the outcome of the NFL's investigation, because that is going to be a separate thing that happens, Justin Tucker could be found in violation of the NFL rules, team rules, whatever it could be. And the league's personnel conduct policy clearly prohibits behavior that undermines and puts at risk the integrity of the NFL. Now, John Harbaugh was asked about Deshaun Watson. In that situation, the Ravens have had a zero tolerance policy towards off-field behavior, especially as egregious as this, allegedly. And again, took a pretty strong stance on the Deshaun Watson situation following his accusations that also were presented. Now, Justin Tucker, as I mentioned, released a statement, and it was a pretty lengthy one, and I do want to read it out. So we're going to We're going to read the full thing here because I don't want to leave any stone unturned with actually what he said. Tucker reads, the allegations in the Baltimore Banner article about me are unequivocally false. Throughout my career as a professional athlete, I've always sought to conduct myself with the utmost professionalism. I've never been before accused of misconduct of any kind, and I've never been accused of acting inappropriately in front of a massage therapist or during a massage therapy session or during other body work. I've never received any complaints from a massage therapist. I've never been dismissed from a massage therapy or bodywork session, and have never been told that I was not welcome at any spa or other place of business. And accusing me of misconduct, the article takes iniquitous or ambiguous interactions and skews them so out of proportion they are no longer recognizable, and it presents vague insinuations as fact. This is desperate tabloid fodder. It's no surprise that the paper's interactions with me were marked by journalistic failures at every turn. When I first learned that the newspaper was writing this article, they refused to reveal the full claims they were planning to make against me. It wasn't until I was forced to hire the leading defamation law firm in the U.S. to write to the paper, they finally revealed what they were planning on writing. Then when they did finally provide some of this information, they gave me next to no time to provide a response. It is clear why they had no interest in what I or anyone else had to say. Once I reviewed the newspaper's allegations against me, it was apparent that the newspaper was deliberately misconstruing events as nefarious, which were not, and were relying on third-party speculation to create the false, preconceived narrative about me that they believed would generate clicks. The newspaper had already written this false, salacious profile well before ever attempting to speak to me or any of the bodywork professionals I have worked with closely for the better part of the last decade. The newspaper made no effort to interview these key witnesses until prompted to do so by my defamation attorney because they did not want to hear what they had to say about me. I've always made a conscious effort to be considerate and respectful in all of the interactions with the community that I love so much. It is devastating for me to learn that anyone would feel I was offensive in any way. I maintain I did not act inappropriately at any point before, during, or after a professional bodywork treatment session. I would never intend to offend or hurt anyone ever. As a matter of principle, I respect when individuals come forward to report misconduct of any kind. I support a process that allows claims to be properly investigated, but for the sake of myself and my family, I cannot allow false claims to go unchallenged. I cannot be any clearer. These allegations are false and incredibly hurtful to both me and, more importantly, my family. So that's a long statement there, Sam, from Justin Tucker. And obviously, if these allegations are true, it is, of course, you cannot defend that whatsoever. It's almost like a he said, she said situation right now. We don't know. And that's what I don't want to get too far into. I'm sure more will come out as the offseason continues. More could come out today. I don't know what would happen. But at this point, we have the article. We have Justin Tucker's statement. We have some other statements we'll get to as well. But this just was not how I think anyone was expecting this Thursday to go. And here we are with a situation, as you said, Sam, where the Ravens are going to have to make a decision, and they might have to make it rather quickly depending on how this thing goes.
Oh, yeah. If there's more evidence that comes out, then this could be very damaging for Justin Tucker, at least in regards to him being a Baltimore Raven. You mentioned it. John Harbaugh has made a stance with the Deshaun Watson situation that's very similar to this one, maybe not to the magnitude of Deshaun Watson, but still the number of people that have come out have shown that there's a chance it could be true. And if it is, then Justin Tucker is definitely in a heap of trouble. And I would be surprised if he remains a Baltimore Raven, if in fact those allegations prove to be true. But I will say this, because there are certain things in Justin Tucker's, spiel that I think holds weight and should be considered in the public opinion realm, the defamation type of thing. I think a lot of people go through this. I think a lot of high profile athletes or high profile individuals go through this process once they figure out that there is a case against them that's being reported by a newspaper or television publication. They do go the route to find out what that is by going the defamation route. So nothing too disingenuous with the way Justin Tucker went about finding out that information. So I want Ravens fans to be conscious of that, as well as the fact that the NFL investigation, I doubt, honestly, unless there's a smoking gun somewhere, I doubt this leads to anything. I think the Baltimore Banner does a very good job of doing the investigation. You mentioned this came out on the 9th to tip for the Baltimore Banner. They did their due diligence. The investigation was pretty thorough. And as you mentioned, it's pretty much a he say, she say. So unless there's something out there damaging for Justin Tucker out there that maybe leads more to the side of Justin Tucker for sure being guilty of this, I would be surprised if, honestly, they find anything out that hasn't already been done. I think the only avenue where this may get messy for Justin Tucker, if this becomes a police investigation, this comes into the law enforcement realm, and maybe there's some more resources for law enforcement to use. But you mentioned the statute of limitations and all that stuff that's going into it, and the probability of this going that route is kind of low. So this, in my opinion, looks like it may be a stalemate in which, again, the Ravens still find themselves in a lose-lose situation because the public opinion with Justin Tucker, the performance of Justin Tucker this season, all of that stuff going into it. I don't see a way and this ends up where everyone's happy. Of course, you'd love it if you're a Justin Tucker fan for this come up to this is just false allegations. But again, Baltimore Banner does their due diligence. I know a lot of good reporters out there. Justin Fenton was one of the reporters in this story, and I respect his expertise and all of the stuff that he does and getting those facts. So it's tough if you're a Justin Tucker fan. It's tough if you're a Ravens front office personnel, Eric DeCosta, John Harbaugh, all those guys, and his teammates. This is definitely one of those things where you wish it didn't happen, but unfortunately, it's a situation that's out there, and we'll see where it goes.
And here we are, just a very sad day for many different reasons. And again, if these allegations are true, that's something that the Ravens would obviously have to make a decision on. And of course, there's no support for that type of thing anywhere. Absolutely not. The Ravens and the NFL both released statements from a Ravens spokesperson. We are aware of the Baltimore Banner story regarding Justin Tucker. We take any allegations of this nature seriously and will continue to monitor the situations. The NFL spokesperson, Brian McCarthy, says we first became aware of the allegations from the reporter investigating the story as they were not previously shared with the NFL. We take any allegations seriously and will look into the matter. So an investigation will happen from the NFL. Whether that turns up anything remains to be seen. We don't know how that's going to unfold. But we are just so early in this process right now where it could go a million different directions. And if it is true, you obviously stand with the victims and you feel terribly for everything that has happened. The Ravens, again, have taken a stance on ever really since the Ray Rice thing happened of like, look, we're not dealing with any of this. They have put out, like they have made that a part of their identity, both on and off the field, of they bring in good, quote unquote, like good guys, not guys who have troubles or a past history. They take guys off of draft boards. That's been a part of who this Ravens organization is. And now they are dealing with this. And it's such a loaded situation that, again, we don't know enough about right now because we're talking about this now, Sam and I, just a few hours after the initial report dropped. So as things come out and as situations maybe change or don't change, we'll have more to say about it. A lot of people are looking back now to 4 years ago, where there are multiple posts on social media saying, well, Justin Tucker was banned from these massage places. And, this is 2021 we're talking about. We're here in 2025, almost 4 years later. And a lot of those social media posts do line up with some of the things that are said. Now, does that mean it's true? We don't know that yet. I'm not sitting here and telling you one way or the other. But it's a situation that we're just going to have to wait and see. And as those reports maybe come out, we will figure it out. But I feel like these talking points and everything we're going to have to dive into with this situation, we're going to be talking about it for probably the whole offseason, unless the Ravens do make that decision to just cut bait immediately, which I'm not sure how that's all going to unfold.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's just icing on the cake. And the one bet you could look at with $5, NBA, Dallas Mavericks travel north to face the Detroit Pistons and are favored, but only just. FanDuel has the Mavs favored by a single solitary point. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
UCLA destroys the 16th ranked Oregon Ducks.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins.
UCLA just swept, and I mean demolished Oregon. Like, flattened the Ducks. All right? I don't know what you're eating for breakfast, but when the Ducks come to town, Eric Daly Jr. has had some of his best games as a UCLA Bruin, almost identical numbers in both games when UCLA has played Oregon. All right, like absolutely sensational numbers for Eric Daly Jr. when the Ducks have come to town. But it's not just Eric Daly Jr. UCLA saw a standout play from Kobe Johnson. It's not that Johnson scored a lot. It's the fact that he had 9 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and just had active hands defensively. In a play that's not going to go on the scorebook, Oregon had a wide open fast break, and Kobe Johnson swatted it out of the Ducks' hands, and it turned into not only not a score, not only a side out of bounds, it was UCLA ball after that was all said and done. Maybe that was the steal, and I'm blanking on what was the scoring, but it was his forcing of that play, the deflection, the hustle, the heart, that kind of characterized what UCLA has. Now Dylan Andrews not cramping and scoring 15 points. His slow confidence building, very slow, but the increase in his effectiveness helps UCLA. Sky Clark, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, 5 points. I like it when he shoots the ball really well from 3, but when he's dishing out some assists, that means the Bruins are shooting well as a team. In this game, UCLA shot close to 60%, shot really well from 3, and Cronin, I thought, used his rotations really well. The big question was, would UCLA fare well if Bilodeau did or did not play? Well, he was not even a questionable mark on the pre-game availability given by the Big Ten. So Bilodeau came out and he started this game and played 28 minutes and played much, much, much better than he did when UCLA played Eugene. That meant, what's Adai Mata going to do? He has earned his starting spot. I think it would be wise, in my mind, keep him off the starting lineup, go small, attack. And as Cronin was alluding to, Daly gets tired. He doesn't always put in the best minutes. He can only do so much. That's when Mata's minutes come in, and that's how we saw UCLA rotate in this game. We saw an effective Daly, who's not wearing the mask. We've seen a healthy Mata grow and blossom into a young star, into what UCLA needs. Not like a national star, but a UCLA star. And then Bilodeau was efficient, absolutely efficient after missing practically 2 games in a row, leaving early against Washington, missing the USC game, and came out, despite a couple of misses early, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists on no turnovers in almost 30 minutes of action. UCLA didn't have to ride their guys too hard. Now 2 days off in preparation for what should be an absolutely monumental battle in Big Ten play. It's not going to decide the Big Ten championship because UCLA has 4 losses and Michigan State has none, but potentially being able to snap a 13-game winning streak with Michigan State coming to town. I believe they play USC first, so they'll have a game. UCLA can have the scout. They'll be rested before they play Sparty. And yet UCLA, they've won 5 in a row. Think about the month of January alone. We're here January 30th of 2025. The emotions in this month have flip-flopped so many different ways, all right? You start opening day. You got, Nebraska. They lost that game. And then UCLA's fallen off. Nebraska looked way worse. Oh, who did Nebraska beat tonight? They beat Illinois. That helps UCLA, considering Illinois went to Lincoln and lost in overtime, but Nebraska winning that game is going to help UCLA with that loss not look as bad because Nebraska just kind of fell out of it for a moment there. Then UCLA comes back home, plays Michigan. So far, their only loss at home this year. They had a moment with a lot of momentum, not a lot of Adai Mata consistency yet, and the Bruins fought but couldn't win that game against Michigan, and that's when Cronin called them out. 2 ugly L's later, you lose to Maryland. Cronin got axed, and then next thing you know, Maryland's played really, really well since that game. They've almost used that win as a catalyst to their winning streak. Rutgers, UCLA was still beaten up, couldn't figure it out, lost against Rutgers, and since then, beating Iowa, seeing William Kyle blossom, then all of a sudden Wisconsin, a huge, at the time, top 20 win for UCLA, getting Mata to explode, beating Washington without Bilodeau, winning these last 2 games without Tyler Bilodeau, has showcased UCLA knows how to win in different ways, going big, going small, mixing and matching. And that's how I liked. Notice that UCLA didn't play with Daly, Bilodeau, and Mata on the floor tonight. They didn't use those guys on the floor. They're not a good mix. They're not a good mix to play together. They're not a good rotational lineup playing together. But you can play 2 of those guys together, and any which way you move it together, you piece it together, that is a good lineup. A lot of it offensively, But what's made Mata so devastating and impactful on the floor is that he's got 7 points. He had 3 blocks. He had 3 assists, no turnovers. So when the young sophomore turning into almost UCLA's most important player, because UCLA doesn't have any size. They don't have any size in the paint if Mata's not there. They're playing small. They can start small, but this team is not meant to play 40 minutes undersized, and that's how Biddle ate them up earlier. So Mata being able to score. He could have had 10 points if he hit all his free throws, but a couple of rebounds here, a couple of assists, some impactful defense. And it's not just the blocks, it's closing out on the shooters, right? Oregon shot a lot of threes. They shot 23 threes, tried to draw UCLA's big men, specifically Mata, out there. That's why their leading scorer, Nate Biddle, took 6 threes and was only 1 of 6. Some of those closeouts, you're going to leave the shot short. You're going to overcompensate on the arc and miss it long. And not every shot was blocked or affected by a UCLA hand. Oregon was dreadfully cold in this game from downtown. UCLA didn't turn it over. Oregon had more points in the paint, even with UCLA having 20 minutes of Mata off the bench. But they had the game plan with Dana Altman to shoot. And the Bruins forced them away from that. And by the time Oregon maybe could get back in it, Hart and Hustle got it in, and UCLA was making every shot known to man. Daily, I'm pulling up the numbers here for what UCLA did the first time. But the Bruins defensively was an absolute masterclass. This time against Oregon, 78-52. Let's let that sink in. They beat them by 26. They practically beat them by 30. And UCLA in this last time they played Oregon, when Oregon was top 12, went to Eugene and beat them. And I'm pretty sure UCLA in any ranking, in any statistical category, should be ranked higher than Oregon. Now, here are Eric Daly's stats in the 2 games against Oregon. All right. Daly in Eugene went 7 of 8, 3 of 4 from downtown, and had 19 points against the Ducks in Eugene. Tonight, he went 8 of 9 with 21 points and was perfect from the line in downtown. 4 rebounds, only 1 turnover in 23 minutes of action, mind you. 23 minutes of action. So if you combine the 2 games, you've got 15 for 17 from the floor. You mix in 40 points, so he's averaging 20 on like 90% shooting, 5 of 6 from downtown, and playing near perfect basketball when Oregon comes to town. That is a matchup made in Daly's and anything. That's a matchup made in heaven for Eric Daly Jr. He has feasted on the Ducks twice. You can't just play a team twice and miss 1 shot, taking 8 or more, and cook them and say that's a fluke. He's done that twice now and just dominated. The difference in this game was UCLA got more help from Tyler Bilodeau. He played terrible the first game. Nate Biddle didn't play as well for Oregon this game. That's because UCLA has their own 7-footer who can make an impact in games now. Doesn't need a double-double. Didn't need to have 5 blocks. He got a few of those, a couple of assists. He had a couple of rebounds. Affected the game in several different categories. And even though he missed most of his free throws, that's a big disparity when the opposition's being forced to foul their big men, stop the clock, and let UCLA get into the bonus early.
Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's just icing on the cake. And the one bet you could look at with $5, NBA, Dallas Mavericks travel north to face the Detroit Pistons, and our favorite, but only just, FanDuel has the Mavs favored by a single solitary point. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Anyone who watched the pregame, the pregame I did of this game itself, I talked about it. I'm like, hey, Nebraska's going to let you shoot a bunch of threes. And if those threes don't fall, this is a game that Illinois absolutely should win. But if those threes don't fall, I can absolutely see them losing. And losing is what they do, 80-74. Illinois shoots, 10 for 42 from three-point land. I think I literally said that stat. If they shoot 43 pointers and they only made 10 of them, I think I literally said that in the preview. Oh my gosh. I wish I'd put a little money on this beforehand, but Ken, I don't know. I'm at the point now. I don't know if this is your first post game. The crowd, the chat in here knows it. This is what we call a therapy session. For 24 hours, we're allowed to get out whatever hot takes we want, whether it's good or bad, whether you believe it or not. We just went through a roller coaster of a game, and it's been a roller coaster of a season. This may be the lowest of the lows. Nebraska, again, is just a very bad basketball team. And Nebraska was begging you to win this game, and Illinois just couldn't do it. That USC loss, USC looks like they're at least a mid-table Big Ten team now. Maryland has done pretty well over the last week and a half at this point, but Nebraska has lost 6 in a row, and they haven't looked good. I know you're one of the few people who watches more Big Ten games than I do. Nebraska has looked really, really bad, in particular this month. And, here comes Illinois. You have this game. I knew it was going to be different because it's hard to win in Nebraska, but you can't use that as an excuse because they've just won they've lost 2 in a row in Lincoln. And, I'm just going to keep rambling. So let's get your thoughts real quick.
Okay, well, every time I've ever been to therapy, I start with the bad stuff and then end with the good stuff. So I'll start with the bad stuff.
Ken, this is only a half-hour show.
Okay, sorry. Hummercow stunk tonight. And I feel like he's been stinking massively. Like, he has got to help Jacques Konas a little bit, man. Like, the guy needs some help scoring, and he's getting wide open looks. It feels like the one in overtime or might have been at the end of regulation. I mean, we just finished watching it, so it's a little mixed up to me, but he's in the middle of the paint. He's like 7 feet away from the basket, a wide open shot, and he front ends it. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, confidently rise up and make a shot once in a while. He was awful. The 3-point shooting, especially in the first half, was like, the announcers were even just like, this is atrocious. Like, I think it started out like 1 for 12, I believe, or 2 for 13. So just really bad 3-point shooting all around. But since you said it's only 30 minutes, I'll do 2 good and 2 bad. The good, the 2 bad. I just finished the bad. The 2 goods I will say is I actually liked what Dre Gibbs Lawhorn was doing at the beginning of the game. He looked like somebody that didn't want to lose this game. He looked like someone that was like, I'll be the one that attacked the basket. I'm not just going to settle for threes. And he had some really nice plays in the first half, looked really good. And then obviously towards the end of the second half and into overtime, I know Riley missed that last one, which I thought was for sure dropping. It looked clean off his hand. He played really good at the end. Like, he looked like he was like a top player in the country towards the end of that game. So there's my 2 bad and my 2 good for therapy.
By the way, I was just cracking a joke when you said I'll talk about all the bad. The joke was that you're not going to be able to fit it in 30
Oh, yeah.
minutes.
No, I know.
Yeah, it's just one of those, it's frustrating. And I feel like I always try to be more optimistic when things are bad and more pessimistic when things are going really, really good. But right now, I definitely am on the more pessimistic side. Like, I'm at the point where now it's like, now the Oregon game, the Indiana game, the Penn State game, those are the anomalies, right? That may have gotten Illinois the national spotlight and what has those national writers, talking about Illinois and putting them in tiers that I don't think they belong in anymore. But what we saw today, I mean, maybe not this bad, but you're seeing more so like that the average of this team is a good team, clearly not a great team, at least in my opinion. At this point, Michigan State, Purdue are in another tier. I think Michigan is very close to there. Michigan does have their flaws themselves, but, I hate to say this, but, it's one of those where, when you turn over 10 guys on your roster and all these this whole team is young. I think those wins against Arkansas, that win against Oregon, against Penn State, while it was just kind of like a temporary injection of optimism, but now the team halfway through the Big Ten season is starting to play like a team that just turned over 10 guys. And, it's frustrating. And trust me, this is not an excuse that I'm making. This is just, if anything, I'm criticizing Brad because he guessed wrong. I understand what kind of offense he wanted to build, but this team can't shoot three-pointers. And, they can on occasion, but not nearly often enough to win a conference like the Big Ten. And, I understand the whole long-term project is to win in March, but I can't see this team make three-pointers for 6 straight games. I'm not sure if they can make back-to-back. At this point, I honestly think I've readjusted my goals to, hey, let's please make it to the second weekend. Because Illinois, I said this on the last show, they can beat the best teams on their best night. But this is proof that they can lose to the worst teams on their worst. And I'm telling you, Nebraska is not good. They're begging you to win that game at the end. And Illinois just simply wouldn't.
Yeah, the thing that stunk about it, from an Illinois standpoint, is that I didn't even think, defensively, I thought Nebraska played really well. They had a lot of energy on defense, but they were just as bad shooting throughout this game as Illinois was. And it was they couldn't take advantage of what Illinois was giving them. It felt like they were missing bunnies. They were missing shots left and right. I mean, that Wooster kid, they were basically giving him 7 feet. He could not make a shot. He finally ended up hitting 1 3, but and then that step in towards the end. But Nebraska was not good. They haven't been good all year. The home court advantage thing is not a real thing anymore. To your point, they just lost 2 in a row there. So this is a game that it's not one that Illinois needs. It's not we have to win every single game, but it's one that you don't want to lose though. You do not want to lose to a team like this. And, I have to give Nebraska a little bit of credit. Towards the end, the momentum was all shifting to Illinois, and they came back out in overtime and played really well. So tip my hat to them on that. I think that the biggest problem, though, as I'm rambling now, it feels like the interior defense is obviously a problem. I always say his name wrong. Ivisic,
yeah.
Okay. I understand he's gone. I said this after the Maryland game, though. At some point, these kids have to have some pride. The guys that are there have to have some pride and say, we're not going to get scored on down low. That kid from Nebraska, Morgan, I've never heard his name before this evening. And when Morez got his 3rd foul, you could see that he was being a little bit more tentative on defense, and I understand that, but that guy making post moves and scoring down low should never happen ever. I don't know.
Yeah, Morez is one of the few guys who I actually think was a decently bright spot with the rebounds he was grabbing in the time, and he deflected a lot of shots. 3 blocks on this game.
One really cool block, by the way. The 2-handed block was awesome.
Yeah. I said this in the Discord. By the way, if any of you are not in the Discord, we're having one tonight. Let's just say that while we were watching this game. You could really see how the team missed Ivisic just because of what Brad says. He's the quarterback on defense. And so how many baskets did Nebraska get right at the rim? Whether it's an inbounds play, just someone back cutting and getting an easy layup. Usually Tommy's back there letting whoever know, hey, this is coming. And that communication just wasn't there today.
Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's just icing on the cake. And the one bet you could look at with $5, NBA, Dallas Mavericks travel north to face the Detroit Pistons, And our favorite, but only just, FanDuel has the Mavs favored by a single solitary point. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
Who needs Anthony Davis? Not the Lakers in Washington, 134-96.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
The Lakers just blow through the I can't, like, god awful doesn't describe what the Wizards are, but they're bad.
I want to emphasize from the jump that the Lakers did a lot of things legitimately well in this game, especially, we'll get into it, approach, and they should be commended for it. That being said, holy hell, these Wizards are awful. Like, how the F did they win 6 games? Awful. Like, I was thinking about this. The greatest moment of Kyle Kuzma's career as a Wizard is the pink sweater photo. Like, honestly, that's the high point of his time in DC. And it brings me, as somebody who really liked Kuzma when we covered him and thought he was an important part of that title team, it brings me no pleasure to say this. I'm not looking to pile on him, but my God, did he make a mistake when he said, don't trade me to Dallas?
Nope. Should have gotten traded to Dallas. Would have been better.
I mean, bro.
Go ahead and get traded, man.
Because now it's harder to move the guy.
He's having a terrible year.
Yes, he is.
And so, look, I will even, you talked about approach and things like that. I'm probably going to get myself into trouble in this episode for praising the Lakers as much as I'm going to over the course of this episode. But I actually do feel like, and I wrote about this for the newsletter, of course, Locked On Lakers newsletter, you go to lockedondaily.com and subscribe to it there. I actually think this was an important win in a lot of ways. Again, Washington's awful, so I'm not talking about like throwing a parade or anything, but Lakers playing without Anthony Davis, that we knew was going to happen. Everybody could prepare for it. It was the first game without AD of a stretch of some amount of games. That maybe takes into the All-Star break, maybe not. The Lakers certainly projecting optimism about the long-term impact of this injury, so to speak, on AD, and they don't think it's going to be a long-term deal. But also no Dorian Finney-Smith. He was out with a shoulder contusion, and Gabe Vincent still out as well. So the Lakers were down one massive part of the roster and 2 significant pieces in the rotation. And given how they played, Andy, against Philadelphia and Charlotte, I don't think it was a given that they were going to come out and put on this kind of performance. They should, but whether or not it was a given, I'm not buying that for a second.
I think if we've made one thing clear this season, professionalism in that way is not a given with this team at all. We've talked about how I think they all intellectually understand that in order for this group to go as far as they want to, save some type of unexpectedly big move at the deadline, they have to be an execution-based team. They have to be an effort-based team. They have to be an energy-based team, focus-based team. They all understand this. Like, hell, they've all talked about it openly. Whether they've actually embraced it is at best an open question, which means a game like tonight, even when you look at it and say, guys, no, seriously, you have to win this game, it's not something you could take for granted that they would come into it with the right approach. And I thought, just looking at the halftime, some of the halftime numbers, 78-45, they were up, which obviously is 33 points, is a massive, massive lead. But they only had 4 turnovers in the first half. And then they had 4 in the third quarter, but like one of them was a Trey Jameson offensive foul. 2 of them were Jackson Hayes passes, which, I mean, respectfully, I don't think Jackson Hayes is an awful passer for his position, but you don't look for Jackson Hayes to be somebody running your offense. But like, they took care of the ball. Their splits at the half were 60% from the field, 53% from deep, 100% at the line. They out-rebounded Washington 30-13. Other than Jordan Poole, no Wizard had double figures, 14 points, but 11 shots. And Shake Milton, who we're going to talk about, he had a terrific game. He had 9 points in the half. He almost outscored the Wizards bench himself. Like top to bottom, there was a seriousness from this team from the jump that I hope they can recognize. You got to do this every game.
Yeah, and I mean, this is how they're going to have to do it with AD out. And obviously, look, the next 4 games get
got to do it with AD in.
Yeah, well, right, but I mean, like this stretch coming up, especially, like, you know, this is how it's going to have to be until Davis is back in the lineup. You have no safety, security blanket there, and it's going to be harder in New York on Saturday. It's going to be harder against the Clippers. It's going to be harder against the Warriors. It's going to be harder against the Pacers.
It's going to be harder against any team that isn't the Wizards.
It is, and then it'll get slightly easier against Utah. But even then, that's going to be harder than what Utah's not this bad. But even though what I really liked about this game, and you look at approach, you look at focus, you look at all that stuff, is they never had a moment in this game where they said, okay, yeah, we got this. Even though it was abundantly clear that they, in fact, had got this. Like there was a zero, like Washington was game to be like for like 5 minutes, 6 minutes. And as soon as there was a little bit of a push and a gap, they were like, yeah, we're done. And you could just sort of tell, like there wasn't any real fight there or discipline or anything.
I don't blame them.
I
blame them in the sense that this is your job. You're getting paid millions of dollars. You're supposed to be putting up a fight. I'm just saying I don't blame them if they can't come up with the motivation.
This is their second 16-game losing streak of the season. Second. Like they came into this game having lost 15 straight. And that wasn't their longest losing streak of the season. Atlanta has lost to this team twice. Shame on them. Shame on you, Atlanta Hawks.
They've only played 47 games to have 2 different 16-game losing streaks. Like that is in its own right actually pretty damn impressive.
They started 2-2.
Wow. Woo.
You imagine, like they were like, maybe we got there. We're gonna shock the world this year. No,
I'm Alex. Sorry, I demand a trade now.
Yeah, I think I called him Olivier on TV. That's his brother. But anyway, that's okay. But like this team has done that thing where they just assume, okay, the game's over. The other team's not going to keep trying, and they're bad, and it's ours. And that's how you run a lead up to 40 or whatever it was. And I think this, to me, is one of those times we talked about it heading into the game. Sometimes losing your best player is the thing that will drive your focus, because if you don't do it right, you're going to get embarrassed. And while the Lakers probably could have played a bad game and still won, a bad game where you beat the Wizards by like 6 and LeBron's playing deep into the fourth quarter as opposed to 26 minutes, which is great. That leaves a really bad taste, even if you end up winning it. And so the fact that they didn't have to do any of that is great.